Talk about this because everybody's talking about it, the recent Oregon shooting. It has no doubt sparked the conversation once again about having stricter gun laws. President Obama has come forward. He is blaming the inaction on gun limits after this Oregon shooting. He calls for expanded gun control measures. He has been for some time. However, is that really the answer? I think that's the question that so many of you at home have. Is that really the answer? Having new or modified gun laws. So we want to have this conversation with legal analyst Vikas Bajaj, who is here this morning. Once again, good to see you.
Good morning, thank you.
Nice to have you here again. So let's talk about this because I think that's important. It's the one question I think so many of us ask over and over. Here's the president saying, listen, America, you need to make it clear to your lawmakers whether you or not you want new gun laws. My question is, do we need new gun laws?
The answer to that, in my opinion, is no. I think what's going on here, frankly, is President Obama is doing his best to politicize this issue. In other words, this is really turning into a federal government, our big brother, the federal government, telling us, a state, what to do, and our citizens as a consequence. The problem with what I see in Obama's recitations of what a potential solution would be are that they are relatively hard to enforce, and it does not engage the idea that there are existing weapons out there. So we may actually create controls in the proliferation of new weapons and new registered weapons, but there's a tremendous amount, millions of weapons out there right now that can be gained by anyone through a private deal, not through a federally licensed dealer. In my opinion, the real resolution in this has to be with local governments and state governments. The legislators need to make a decision to say, if we have anyone on an implicit watch list, let's say, as we were talking about earlier, meaning a person had been in a 72-hour involuntary mental capacity evaluation, what we call a 5150, or any ruling by the court that that individual was incompetent to stand trial, or any ruling that there's a restraining order issued against that individual. Or, of course, the fourth would be criminal convictions that would qualify to prohibit somebody from owning a weapon. These are four things that I think the local legislators really need to concentrate on. Not so much President Obama's line of taking away the guns of our citizens and slowly and gradually, in my opinion, disarming the citizenry.
This is interesting. So you're basically saying, in your expert opinion, no need for new gun laws, that really, in your opinion, is not the answer. But what's interesting to me is that you mentioned these watch lists, and that's up to local leaders to kind of figure out how to do this.
Correct.
Do they currently exist? Let's take California. Do we have some sort of a watch list where we can put people's names?
Well, if I knew everything about the way everything worked, I would tell you definitively yes or no. My gut instinct is absolutely there is a watch list. And that watch list, as far as armaments go, as far as buying firearms, is exactly that list of restraining order petitioners who have won against respondents, 5150 registrants, and things of that nature. Let me give you a statistic about a different state, Colorado. For instance, there is mandatory reporting if an individual is involuntarily capacitated because of a mental illness.
Okay. All
of these individuals have to have mandatory reporting. They need to be on, for instance, an implicit watch list. In Colorado, for instance, 99% of the people who are actually in on this psychological evaluation duration involuntarily were not reported to the state government. So these individuals were not actually on the watch list. And this dovetails into what I think is really the most appropriate thing. Let's get the local database communicating with the state database so we can have an effective evaluation during the 10-day waiting period, which we now know is on appeal.
Bingo. I think you hit it right on the head. I know we need to wrap, but one last question that I have is from a legal standpoint, if you are mentally ill, legally, can your name be put on a list?
The answer is yes.
Okay.
And it would come as a consequence of these other avenues, such as being a respondent on a restraining order, having a court declare an individual to be mentally incompetent to stand trial, a 5150 evaluation. Yes,
I guess
these
it gets
can be on the list.
complicated then, having, I guess the question then becomes, not everyone who is mentally ill is put on a list. There
That's
has
correct,
to be a
but-
reason for it. But take the shooter, for example. The Oregon shooter, according to people who knew him, he had graduated from a school where he had some emotional problems. Yet he had guns that were legally purchased.
I understand, but let's also not let the cart get in front of the horse. Many times you have a catastrophe like this, which is the first evidence of mental illness. So we need to make sure we have controls on the front end rather than being reactive to tragedies
Perhaps if
like
you're
this.
a parent and you know your child is not well, maybe take some action.
Just hit the nail on
as
the
a
head,
parent.
absolutely.
Thank you, Vic.
My pleasure.
Interesting conversation.